But there are still major issues of whether you incentivize areas which have little competitive advantage and how to promote the development of both skilled labor force and employment in general. Some of the issues on development of skills and human resources have been set out here. You asked a question about innovation park and research. I think the age of the Mai Baap Sarkar is not there. So do not ask a government spokesman that necessarily. The innovation park that does exist has been promoted by the IIT. MMRDA has some concept of having an innovation park near Mumbai. I think that concept needs to be developed in somewhat more detail. But obviously we know that in India, there is a tremendous scope and potential for improvement in holistic development of human resources by an integration of different economic activities, research institutions, academia, as well as industry itself. And I think we have here, for example, Dr. Mashilkar has been one of the pioneers, one of the people who has promoted this process. It is a long haul, but this is something that we will have to look at as part of the industrial policy also, at least from the limited perspective of skill development for greater employability. I'd like to tell you, for example, that already nearly 250 ITIs, government IDIs, are working with industry across the state. We now have 1,400 vocational training providers, many of which are industries, for in situ development of skills and modular employable skills among workers with little basic, little formal education or for school dropouts. So that process has started. I'm also happy to tell you that we are the leading state in that process, but there is a long way to go. Another issue is land. Land is going to become a very important issue, and that will become the centerpiece of any industrial policy, whether it is in Maharashtra or elsewhere. As I mentioned to the Chief Minister, if I get land, I can go home, I can go and sleep the whole day, I can come back once a month and collect my salary. I'm not exaggerating very much, I should tell you. I can't tell you the names at this time, but the kind of people I have and the number of people I have waiting for land at suitable locations is incredible. This is the interest that Maharashtra attracts, and how to keep it there and how to promote employment, how to generate a whole process of further development in the state is what we need to work at. We have taken a lot of initiatives in terms of how you do land acquisition, how you make local people stakeholders in that. Financial incentives is another thing, I don't want to get into that. Infrastructure, of course, is a very major area. Infrastructure not only for industrial development, but across the board. And obviously we know the impact of that on quality of life and other indicators. We have drawn up a broad guidelines for PPP, which we did not have in place. We have had several models, as you know, of PPP projects, but a PPP policy will shortly come into place. There is a tremendous need for interagency coordination. There is a tremendous need for private participation, both in planning, execution, and financial modeling of these projects. Ease of doing business is a long-standing issue in India, including in Maharashtra. Lots of people talk about single window. Actually, single window, you may have a window in front and several windows at the side and the back. Now, there are good reasons for that. How do you have a single window, for example, for environmental clearance? Or, frankly, even a time limit. There are major issues which have come up in that. So let us not talk so much of single window as a clearance mechanism, but a single window where you can actually go for facilitation, for information, and also to provide the interface between you and other agencies. That is precisely what we have started doing in Maharashtra. Last year, MIDC started a portal which performs that function. I will call it an extensive portal. It gives information of the requirements for different kinds of industry across central institutions, agencies, local bodies, etc., etc. And increasingly, to the extent possible, they will integrate it with those agencies. At the same time, we are also working on what I call an intensive single window portal with the Government of India and for other states. Maharashtra is one of them. That portal will go live in the next few months. It is in its pilot phase. Maharashtra is one of the states in it. And that will be a portal which will actually track and provide those clearances between selected agencies, and over time, depending on how much you can integrate with those agencies, it can improve. The second thing you require in order to do that is to have some clarity about when you can get what and what is the sequence by which you should make applications for different kinds of industries. That is also something we are working on to see whether that is possible. There is no magic wand in this. Nobody will be able to say that if you don't get environmental clearance in X number of days, the Secretary Industries will be able to give it to you. That is not possible. So let us recognize that and see what we can do with that. The third thing is that there needs to be an escort system for industry. If there can be an escort system for industry, there can be an escort system for business, apart from industry, and particularly for SMEs. Mr. Sarunkhe, who always talks about SMEs, will be happy to know that that is the other thing we would like to work on. And that requires outsourcing. It requires maybe retired government officers, existing people from different agencies, and consultants. But you should be able to, now after so many years, get that sort of system in place. Some states started doing that, but unfortunately have gone into event management. I don't want to comment on that. But this is something that is required, and I think all the states are sharing their own experiences, and we should be able to come up in some model. I would like to say something about it when we get into the new industrial policy. There are niche areas. MSME is not a niche area, but a lot can be done with MSMEs, and a lot is going on which is not glamorous enough to come in the newspapers. For example, there are programs of cluster development by which diagnostic studies are conducted for existing clusters of small-scale industries. And with central and state support, SPV is formed by these industries themselves to take up these projects. They can include common facilities, they can include capacity building, etc. And the range is huge. For example, at Pen, Ganesh Murtis, there are issues about what kind of material they should use. That is a cluster we are working on. In Chandrapur, we are working on a cluster with people who are interested in doing things with fly ash. In Gadchiroli, we are looking at bamboo. In Sindhudurg, we are looking at mango processing. Does it come into the papers? No, doesn't matter. But this is something that you require to consolidate. And where do we stand? We are one of the 3 leading states in this in the last 3 years, along with Tamil Nadu and Andhra. Those people who are involved in this and will generate that kind of consolidation of small-scale industry in those areas, they know how powerful this instrument is. This is another thing that we would like to develop in the new industrial policy. I would only like to end by saying that increasingly there are other kinds of regulatory issues which have become more complex, and this ease of doing business to some extent needs to see what models we can follow to provide that interface, whether it is in terms of issues relating to biotechnology, nuclear energy has been mentioned. These are big things. I'm talking about much smaller things. And one final issue that I would like to mention, because it is something I think on which we have not got our act together as a government, whether in Maharashtra or elsewhere, is how to integrate or internalize technological developments And I'm not saying at the forefront of technology, I'm saying appropriate technology in development initiatives. And I'm saying that since both Dr. Mashilkar and Dr. Kakodkar are here, that this is something that we have yet to learn how to do. I don't know whether one can do it through an industrial policy, but I think it is certainly something that we need to look at and develop in public institutions and private institutions in future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think I thank